We'll discuss the importance of mentorship, inclusive leadership, and how these approaches can shape organizational culture and sustainability outcomes. To set the stage, let's consider some recent data on women's leadership in Canada according to the Prosperity Project's 2024 report. Women held 30, oh, okay, sorry, just one second. What am I clicking? For here? Okay, perfect, thanks. So women, according to the Prosperity Project's report, women held 37.7% of corporate director roles, 37.8% of executive officer roles, and 40.1% of senior management roles across industries. In traditionally male-dominated sectors, such as mining, oil and gas extraction, transportation, and warehousing, women accounted for 42% of corporate director roles. However, representation varied across by sector, with women holding 35% of executive officer roles in finance and insurance and only 31% in utilities and retail trade. So while progress is evident, these numbers remind us that there's more work to be done to achieve, true equity, especially in sectors driving change in environmental policy, practices, and innovation. So with that context in mind, we'd like to start with kind of a quick pulse check, and we're gonna go through 3 Slido questions. So we're inviting you all to participate, as your responses will really help frame our conversation. I'm sorry, I don't know what's happening with the mic, and provide valuable insight into our shared experiences and perspectives. So you should be able to scan the QR code in the top right corner. And our first question for you is, what is your current role? Awesome, we'll give you just a few more seconds. It looks like we have a really good split. A lot of early career, some mid-career professionals, few entrepreneurs and senior leaders. Great mix. Awesome. We're gonna give you maybe 5 more seconds and then we'll flip to the next question. Our next question for you is going to be, have you faced gender-related challenges in your career progression? And it'll come up in just a minute here. So we're seeing quite a few yeses. I'd say the majority are yeses. All right, and our last question is, how many women do you have on your leadership team? Okay, so we have, it would depend on the size of the company, I guess, but yeah, smaller numbers. So I always find answers to audience polling like this to be insightful, and I think having perspective from all of you will really play a role in shaping the direction of our discussions today. Before we dive into questions for our panelists, I'd just like to briefly introduce each of them. Our first panelist, starting from the right, Lenore Newman, is co-founder of Bandit Foods Consulting and director of the Food and Agriculture Institute at the University of the Fraser Valley, where she holds a full professorship and chair in food and agriculture innovation. Dr. Newman is a past Canada Research Chair and chairs the Council of the Canadian Academy's Atypical Agriculture Committee, and is an emeritus member of the Royal Society of Canada's New College. She mentors in Creative Destruction Labs Rockies agricultural stream, and was a member of BC's Premier's Food Security Task Force, sat on the BC Minister of Agriculture's Advisory Committee, and is a member of the X-Brain Brain Trust. She works as a consulting fruit hunter and has been featured in the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Atlantic, the National Post, the Globe and Mail, and CNN. She co-leads the SF4C National Agri-Food Initiative with Dr. Evan Fraser of Guelph. Her award-winning books include Speaking in Cod Tongues, Lost Feast, and she is the co-author of Dinner on Mars. She holds a BSc in Physics from the University of British Columbia and a PhD in Environmental Studies from Toronto's York University. Our second panelist to my right here is Rhonda Smith. Rhonda Smith is co-founder and chief operating officer at Trace Associates. Trace is a mid-sized environmental science, engineering, and management consulting firm servicing a diverse market across Canada. Ms. Smith completed her Bachelor of Science degree at the University of Victoria in British Columbia and completed the Institute of Corporate Directors ICD Rotman Directors Education Program and earned her ICD designation. She is past executive board member of the Canadian Land Reclamation Association Alberta's chapter, as well as other community not-for-profit organizations. Since co-founding Trace in 2006, Rhonda has been responsible for the operations of the company, focusing on business management, strategy development, and corporate governance. As a transformational leader, Rhonda has built a company based on respect and inclusion. Our final panelist today is Janelle Hutchinson. As the University of Saskatchewan's first Chief Sustainability Officer, Janelle leads the implementation of the university's sustainability strategy and assists leaders across the organization with moving the work of the sustainability strategy forward. Janelle's passion for sustainability began with undergraduate degrees in microbiology and agriculture and bioresources engineering. Upon graduation, she eagerly joined post-secondary education administration, becoming an employee at the University of Saskatchewan in 2002, where she has led teams within student services, strategic services, and infrastructure, planning and land development, while also expanding her interest in organizational leadership with an interdisciplinary Master of Arts in Organizational Communication in 2011. Janelle is delighted to now be able to focus on sustainability within the post-secondary environment, working across campus to identify ways to meet sustainability commitments and encouraging both students and faculty to embrace a more sustainable and just future for all. So thank you all for joining us today. Our first question for the panelists is around your career journey. So I'm wondering if you can share key milestones in your career journey that shaped your leadership style and the trajectory of your career. Lenore, do you want to start?
Yeah, glad to. So I really struggled with what to focus on for this question, because it's been a long, strange journey. But I thought my career has really been defined by the pivots in a lot of ways. And one that really shaped everything that came after was when I finished my PhD. It's a time where you really do wonder what you're going to do when you grow up. And I was offered a strange postdoc that everyone told me I shouldn't take because it wasn't exactly traditional. And I needed to stick to the traditional because I'd already worked in business. And at that time, it was a bit of a black mark in academy. It's like, what were you doing in California with companies? That's terrible. That isn't true anymore, so don't worry about that. But I was offered a chance to do a postdoc that worked directly with federal government. And I said yes. And what I learned out of that really shaped my leadership style and the rest of my career. Because what I learned really quickly was almost everything I'd learned in academy did not apply in the world of government. In that academy, you tend to build perfect little worlds and great solutions, great science, and then wonder what happens when it wanders out into the real world and fails. Government taught me why, in that all of a sudden I had to learn that anything I proposed or tried to do had to then be adapted by all the other ministries, even the ones that seemed like they had nothing to do with what we were doing. And when I look back, some of the projects that, to be honest, kept me up, in tears some nights because they were just so impossible and everyone was arguing. But I learned to bring different groups together, and I got a lifelong love of policy that followed me wherever I went. So taking a risk, moving to a strange city in a strange environment outside my field, really paid off.
That's great insight. Rhonda, do you want to talk about your own journey?
Yeah, so my background, as you heard, I'm from the consulting industry. And so I think one of the people that I came across in my history was a former client. So being a consultant, I work for clients and I solve client problems. And this particular client was in my early days at a previous employer when I was just kind of starting out in my career. And she was a woman and she was an engineer, and she was probably middle management at the time. She worked for a large upstream oil and gas company. And I really looked up to her. I learned a lot from her. She was always very kind, and she was quiet and poised, but smart. And even when we were in rooms with regulators and some of her leaders, and there was banging on tables and heated discussions, she was always just very calm and balanced. And so that was something that I looked up to. I looked up to her as a bit of a mentor, although I don't think she knows that or knew that. And yeah, so that would be somebody in my past that has, I think, shaped the kind of leader that I want to be.
That's great, thank you. Janelle, what shaped your career journey and your leadership trajectory?
Excellent. Good morning, everyone. I think I'll start by just recognizing the amount of privilege that I've had. We spend a lot of time working with Indigenous partners at the University of Saskatchewan, and so I've been on a reconciliation journey. And so part of that always is recognizing the challenges I've faced, some of them being female in non-traditional roles, but then also the privilege that I have and continue to experience. So I always just like to sort of set some of that context and realize that everyone is going to have had a very different experience and have different sets of barriers and challenges. For me, I started in a science background. I love science, I love engineering, I love all of those things. And, really, and it's interesting when Lenore used the word pivot, I think for me, what I realized is, I didn't have a plan for my career and I didn't need one. I think I've been always really drawn to following good leaders. And with that said, with a little luck, to be had. So as an example, when I was a student leader, or when I was a student in my later years, I was a student leader, and I sort of went for an election to become president of the student union at the University of Saskatchewan. And again, it was luck. I was no great political savvy that I won. And so that was a really, milestone that really changed the course of my career. And it was several women along there. Upon reflection, again, I don't know that you realize it at the time, but one of them was the general manager of that students union. And boy, she was the first sort of mentor that I had to look up to, who, both was committed to my own success, but committed to my growth in the sense that she gave me feedback and really helped me sort of think about who I was as a leader, maybe how I was interacting with my, my fellow elected officials and, looking for some different challenges there. And she really helped me work through that. And I am, will forever be so grateful for the amount of time and energy that she really invested in me as a student at that point. Fast forwarding a little bit later, again, it was another woman, and I had finished my degrees, finished being a student leader, was probably going to come off to Calgary and become an engineer. I wasn't quite sure. I didn't quite know how to break into the field. And so as a student leader, I had met many people in administration, and Kelly is her name. She, of course, now is a very good friend of mine. But at the time, she had a one-year job posting posted, and I thought, oh, maybe I'll just try that. Like, it'll give me a year to really figure out what I want to do. And so I met with her, and there's something, at some level, some of it's intuition that you can just tell when someone's an authentic person, they have integrity, they are going to be there and committed to your success. And so I accepted the job with her. And as Amanda was saying, that was 23 years ago, I think, and I haven't left since. And really, there's just been, and again, when I reflect, I don't know that you know it in the time, but a lot of it is about finding those great leaders and following them and wanting to be part of their teams. So I'll stop there.
That's great, thank you. So I know Rhonda and Janelle, you both have kind of touched on the role of mentorship and sponsorship, but I'm wondering if we can dive a bit deeper into that and talk about, how mentorship and sponsorship have impacted your career and how we can build better networks for women leaders. So I don't know who wants to start us off on that one. Go ahead. You want to go, Lenore?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, mentorship is critical, absolutely critical. And you have to both mentor and then be mentored and then be a mentor later on. And the only way I've succeeded basically living between the worlds of academy, business, and government is by having mentors in each camp that knew absolutely everything and about those. And it's, I think some of the things I'd say, it took me a while to realize that ideally mentors, they might be your friends, but they don't need to be, and sometimes they probably won't be. And so my mentor in government was a senior minister who had retired and still had a hand in party politics. And to be honest, he was a little harsh. And he would tell me in no terms when I was like way offside. And I needed that. And I really, I'm really appreciative of that. Whereas my mentor on the business side is really a friendly person, and her and I get along really great. And so what you're looking for in mentorship, though, is someone who is willing to give away their most precious commodity on this planet to you, which is time. And if you find those people, just be really, really good to them and take care of them, because they make your career way easier, they open doors, but they also are the ones that keep you going when you make a horrendous mistake, which you will. And now that I'm more these days, I still have mentors, but I'm also mentoring these days, and I think back and I'm like, wow, I can't believe these people stuck with me. I was terrible. So, but it's critical. It's how the whole thing works.
Yeah, and from my perspective, I had to really think about this because I feel like maybe I've been shortchanged not having a lot of mentors over the years, so I had to really think about who have been my mentors, and definitely the client that I talked about earlier. But the regret that I have is that I didn't keep in touch with her. I did follow her, and she rose in that oil and gas company to be the VP and is now retired, and I should have stuck with that relationship. I'm probably worried about taking her time, so I don't know if she would have given me the time, but she definitely was one that, that I see as a mentor. I also, when I was first, so because my degree was from the University of Victoria, and I moved to Alberta, I wasn't really eligible for a lot of the professional designation groups that are here. So the one that made the most sense in my early days in my career was the Professional Agrologists of Alberta. And so at first they wouldn't look at me, and because of my schooling, and I was gonna have to go back and do all this extra schooling, which is not very motivating when you've just finished a degree. And so I waited, and eventually that organization relaxed their requirements, and I had a mutual peer colleague that I was working with that was a professional agrologist. She had a soils background from Saskatchewan, actually, and she offered to be my mentor. And I don't think I would have got into the PAG if it wasn't for her vouching for my skills, and so I gladly took that. So that's another example where I have had mentorship. So any of you looking at professional organizations, the PAG organization doesn't require mentors anymore, but they did at that time. But think about that if you're looking for professional organizations. And then from the sponsorship, I wasn't too sure what you meant by sponsorship, but I thought that might be more like allyship. And there's been two men in my career and my growing up in this industry that have been really great allies to me. And one is my husband, who decided to forego his career and let me do my thing, which was amazing. So his support, looking after our kids at home for the first 7 years of their lives, was really great. And then my business partner, who from day one, when we decided to start Trace together, he was, even though when we laid out the roles that we were both going to do, and his interests and skill set were definitely the president role, he has always been like, we are equals, and so we have equal pay, equal everything. And so I've never had to worry about that with a great ally beside me along the way.
Those are both great insights. Janelle, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting because I don't know. I don't remember the word mentorship from like 20 years ago. Like I didn't use that word or I didn't think about it in that way. A little bit like Rhonda, like I had to actually reflect and think, well, yeah, who were they? And then realizing, oh, well, like Leslie was a mentor and Kelly was a mentor. And, you know, sort of upon reflection, I can see that. So these were very much, I mean, relationships, right? And I think that would be something I would really emphasize is relationships that you find, that you build, and how critical that has really been for me. And sort of to Lenore's point, like they don't always, you know, it's not necessarily friends, like it's not, sometimes it can be, you know, yeah, they give you hard feedback or you hear things you don't want to hear or, you know, or there's tension or conflict and that's okay. But again, for me, I think it's really about finding someone that I feel is invested in me, you know, and is really there to support me and or my success, which again, can mean I'm delivering some of those hard messages. And actually, Rhonda, I hadn't thought about mentioning my husband. Kelly, one of my early mentors, I remember her saying, you know, who you choose as a partner is one of the most important decisions you will make, especially from a career perspective. And that has just been so absolutely true. I have been so fortunate, again, to have someone who, yeah, sort of set their career aside. We have 2 kids. And so that has been really key from, yeah, like an allyship perspective. I really, really do appreciate that. I would also say now, again, I'm not actually part of a formal, I think part of the question was about a formal mentor network, and I've actually been really thinking that I need to become a little bit more involved in that. I'm certainly mentoring people right now, but again, it's a relationship based. You know, it's you know, earlier career professionals that I've met across the organization who, you know, maybe I've, you know, worked in their unit or know some of the people, and, you know, again, I spend time with them. That's really what it is. We go for coffee, or, you know, I pop by their office, just sort of check in, and it's been so rewarding. It's been so wonderful to sort of reflect back and yeah, to be able to share, you know, my own experience, whether it's, you know, helpful or not, but to really be sort of that sounding board for them to talk some things through, especially in an organization, you know, a huge complex organization where, you know, you're maybe trying to understand some of the small p politics and department interactions and those kinds of things. So I think it's really, really important if you're at that stage in your career to sort of look around for those opportunities and see if there are relationships where people, you know, where you can be of help and be of service.
Can I add to that? Oh, you want to too? Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to very briefly add to the young women in the room, ask people. And as someone who gets cold called more often these days, it's always, almost always, young men. And I do feel it's one of the few gender differences that's still not broken down yet, in that young men will, after a talk or something, come up to me, shake my hand, look me in the eye, and ask for help. And then you're flattered. You're like, holy crap, this is really exciting. We need to do that too. And there is a little bit of a barrier. So yeah, then everyone should go home today and think of who could I ask for advice this week, and then do it, because they're probably got the time.
Yeah, they'll probably give you the time. Yeah, I was going to add that EcoCanada has mentorship programs, and your professional organization might have mentorship programs. Any employers, a lot of employers create mentorship programs. Create your own. Yeah. Bring peers together and mentor from each other. Some of the best advice I get are from my competitor companies, so friends that have also grown up in this industry, have started their own businesses or taken on leadership roles in those businesses. I call them and say, I'm having this issue. What have you done? Have you seen this? And those are lifelong connections that will help you through your career.
These are great answers. I feel like we could talk all day. The theme of allyship came up in our last question, and I think on a lot of our minds, given the changing political landscape, you know, south of us and within our own country. Asking a question around diversity and inclusion is really important. And so, you know, how does fostering not only gender diversity, but diversity in leadership roles contribute to better decision making and outcomes, specifically in the environmental workforce? I'd love to hear your insights. Do you want to start us off again, Lenore? I feel like
we're in a rut.
Yeah, you know,
we'll break it coming up.
Yeah, we'll mix it up. Well, when I think about it, you know, I think a lot of the changes. Now I'm 25 years into a career now. And when I think about the changes, a lot of it's soft stuff that just makes everyone feel a little more comfortable. And so my first few interviews were mostly to all old white men, who they're fine. I like them. I have them in my life. But, you know, it was a little intimidating. So I'm in a, you know, coming out of physics and into environment, I was in a field that was very male-dominated. And at the time, it was early enough that one of the first questions you'd get on the coffee break after the talk was, what does your husband do? And, you know, I think back, and it was a minefield because, you know, I have a wife, not a husband, and so I had to like come out like 20 minutes into the interview, and that didn't always go well then. That doesn't happen anymore because we don't make those assumptions about the people we work with. They're more diverse, and it's one that there's other more important things, but that I actually really appreciate. And we don't ask the dumb questions as much anymore, which is, I think,
They'll come
a
out
good
once in a
change.
while. But
Now and then.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, diversity in decision-making is better. And I think it's that simple. There's studies now that prove that. And I think it's not just gender diversity, it's all types of diversity. All types of diversity bring different experiences, which is different viewpoints, and you land on a better, more inclusive decision in the end anyway. And I see that firsthand. I have seen situations where even, you know, two women might have very polarizing viewpoints, and that's still good. And I find when I need to make a decision about something or I'm trying to figure something out, I will purposefully go and ask the people that bug me, that sometimes don't agree with me or that push the envelope a little bit more than I would naturally. But I do that because I know that I have to listen to them and that their voice is important too. But I also know that we're going to get to a better decision. And strategically, it's getting their buy-in before I make a decision. Because if they've been consulted, they're more likely to buy into the decision that's made at the end of the day. So that's some of my insight.
yeah, it's some great reflection.
And
Janelle?
I would just pick up on that and just talk a little bit about, and again, I'm 25 years out of being an undergrad, but when I was in engineering school, I felt like we were sort of taught there was sort of one right way to think. There was one right way to approach a problem, the scientific method, all of those sort of ways that we were conditioned. And so, I mean, diversity can mean a lot of things, you know, equity groups and that. But for me, my very first learning was that not everyone's going to think the way that I do. So if you're in careers or in positions where there's different teams and different, like Myers-Briggs, or like there's some different discovery tools, and they're flawed and there are problems with them. But I actually found them really helpful in my early career, doing it as a team or with a group of colleagues, and like, oh, wow, you are completely different than I am. Like, honestly, that was like a light bulb for me. And realizing that it's exactly what Ron was saying, like that there's gonna be value in that and hearing those different opinions. The only other thing I'll add is that I have had unfortunate experiences where there is diversity at the table. There are, you know, all different groups and opinions and perspectives, and it's fantastic, and the leader doesn't care, right? Sometimes there can be, like, in order to actually have diversity in decision making, you need leaders that are actually interested in listening to those perspectives. And so, again, I always bring it back to, like, the actual character of the leader themselves and whether or not they're actually interested in those perspectives and opinions, because again, it actually, I mean, on some level won't matter if they're not actually interested in that feedback themselves and want to actually make a better decision. Some leaders, again, I've seen, you know, both the good and the bad, and some are very much there to sort of reinforce what they were planning on doing already anyway. And so that can be really demoralizing. And if you find yourself in that situation, I think it's, well, important to sort of recognize that that's what's going on, and don't sort of take it on your, you know, oh, gee, obviously I didn't give a good opinion or good perspective or whatever. That might not at all be what's happening. And so being able to, and that's where, you know, having people sort of a little steps outside the situation and being able to say, hey, like I had this experience, maybe talking to some of the colleagues in that same room, like what's going on here? And really trying to sort of unpack that dynamic, because I think maybe it's just me, you know, it's very quick to, oh, it was probably me and it wasn't helpful or didn't contribute. And that is not always what's going on. So it's really, really important to recognize that. And then honestly, if you find yourself in that situation, I would find a way to exit. You know, if you have leaders that actually aren't interested in being part of a team or leading a team, and I mean like an actual team that's going to make decisions, I just personally wouldn't find that as rewarding and as fulfilling.
Those are all really great answers. We're going to pivot a little bit to talk about kind of workforce transformations that we're seeing. So, you know, as industries transition to the green economy, what opportunities or challenges do you see for women stepping into leadership roles?
I'll go first. Oh,
Okay,
go ahead.
Now we're fighting.
We're going to change it up.
Yeah, as leaders, you should, when somebody says, who's next, just say it's me. Yeah, so I am not an expert by any means in the green economy. I have grown up in the contaminated site world, so dealing with the dirty dirt. But you know, from what I have seen and what I am learning by reading and hearing from others is that there's already a lot of women forging the path in that space and being pioneers. And I think that's really the big opportunity, to look for those opportunities. And if you aren't the idea person, you're probably a good advocate for the idea people. So if you see people in that space that have great ideas, but they just don't know how to get their point across, they probably need somebody like you to help them get there.
And I would just add, I don't know if my mic's on. There we go. I have been part of this transition. It's been really interesting. So, back in 1995, in the College of Engineering, there were 1,600 students, and 80% of them were male. And so I was one of the 20% female. But and then when you're in engineering, you're in different disciplines. There's civil and mechanical and electrical and physics. But I was part of it, the smallest group. We were called agricultural and bioresources. So the agriculture was more of typically a focus on the physical infrastructure around agriculture. But the bioresources group, 80% of us were female. And so we were even back then, I was observing that women were more interested in environmental sciences, is what it turned into. And so that was really interesting for me to have seen that. And I think that really, there's a lot of women out there now with that technical background and that technical expertise that is so well poised to sort of make the leadership changes needed as we move the clean energy transition, all of those different things. A different experience is just this last summer, I was at Stanford in California and part of a chief sustainability officer program. There were, I think, 30 of us, and probably 60% of us were female there. And so, you know, the men are catching up, right? There's a lot more interest now, a lot more interest in sustainability, environmental issues, and so it's been really interesting to sort of see that change. And this was a fantastic program because I was able to meet people from all over the globe, different, you know, a primarily private sector, and hearing about their companies and how they are taking ESG and environmental issues really so seriously. Like, there was such a huge opportunity that they could see in their own companies, which is, I think, why they were at this course. So again, I think it's just a fantastic, from a timing perspective, it's a great time to be in this field and interested in these issues, and, you know, being able to get that experience and move forward.
I'd just briefly say one of the neat advantages is there's more roles. And there's exciting new roles, you know, and definitely Chief Sustainability Officer emerged after I'd gone back to academia. And now academia, we have a VP environment sometimes. And so as these new things move forward, keep your eye on what leadership roles are emerging. So the first Chief AI Officer probably hasn't been hired yet, but I suspect they will be in the next few years. Now, they might be in AI, so you can't actually compete for that job, but you know what I mean. Anytime we move forward, it expands our opportunities, which is fun.
Some great insights. Okay, I'm gonna pose one more question to the panel, and then we're gonna open it up to the audience after that. So get your questions ready. What concrete steps can organizations, institutions, or individuals take to create more equitable pathways for women in environmental leadership? We touched on this in a few different ways. But
Okay,
go
I'm
first?
on it. And of course, I'm from the education sector, higher ed. So of course, in my experience, it often starts in K to 12 and then into higher ed with really like STEM, science, technology, engineering, math, like those kind of programs, and really promoting them, well, to everyone, but specifically to female students. So as an example, something that happens at my university, I have a daughter, she's 11, and so they have Sci-Fi, it's called. It's summer programming, day camps for kids all summer, and they are been around for 30 years, wildly popular. Like when the date comes to register, like you are on there, on the computer at that exact time registering. But what they've done is, and these day camps are Monday to Friday, they have set a special girl power night every Thursday. And so for most camps, it's girl power. And that means that those girls are able to stay on campus overnight. Nobody else gets to. They get to stay in the dorms, and they eat lunch or breakfast in the cafeteria, and they do a few extra things. And it is so, well, it's been very popular, but it has completely changed my daughter's perspective. Like, she feels excited and, sort of special. It's an exclusive opportunity. And, again, it's not, they don't really learn that much about science that night, but it's just the idea that they need to be able to see themselves. It's all female engineering students who chaperone them and guide them, and having those role models, I think, at that young of an age is always where we need to start, because people can just self-select themselves out too early, whether it's in the high school courses or even in the university courses. Not to say that you can't pivot and transition at 30, 35 years old, 50 years old at life. I mean, you always can, but building those pathways young and having those role models, I think, is just key.
Yeah, the call to arms one, I think, given the current environment, the current times, I plead with all of you to be nice, and how important that is. I've had a modest level of public notoriety in my career, where I'm actually in the public eye, in the media, often associated with a certain government party. And the thing that really strikes me about the last 5 years is how mean people are in comments. I mean, never read the comments, first of all. You write an article, you do not read the comments. Don't let your mother read the comments either. But on a more serious note, I have seen a lot of the women I really respect in government have to leave for their own sanity and mental health, because people are willing now to say things online that they simply would never say in person. And so don't say anything online that you wouldn't say to someone's face in front of their mom, because to be honest, that's what the world's like right now. And I find it hard, and I know a lot of other people do too, and it's pushing good talent out of leadership at a time we really need it.
Such a good point, Lenore. Rhonda?
Yeah, my experience, I'm not in the public eye, thank goodness, so I don't have to contend with that.
Oh, it's so fun.
Yeah, but I see it in the media and with women leaders. But I think from my perspective as an individual, allyship, we've talked about this, mentorship and allyship, like find those people that are in your corner that are gonna help you rise in your career, but also drive your own career. Don't sit back and wait for other people to solve your own problems and to make opportunities for you. Go and find those opportunities, and they will take you on a path that you didn't even probably expect. That's at least my experience. And I think as organizations, whether it's private sector, public sector, just continuing to have those flexible working arrangements for all types of people, because everybody has different things going on in their life. But from a gender perspective, appointing women into leadership roles so that others can see that there's that opportunity. And I think talk openly about the barriers that you're feeling, but in a way that people are going to listen to you, not in a whiny, complainy way, not in a negative way, but presented in a way that it's an opportunity that is maybe being missed, and it might be heard. Go ahead.
I have something I want to add to that about the language. EDI, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion training, it is amazing and important in its own right, but I've been shocked at how many tools that kind of thing has given me that has helped me in that exact situation to give me language. So, socially, we might talk about being mansplained, right? Well, you kind of can't call somebody out in a meeting and be like, hey, you just mansplained me, but you can, you can learn about microaggressions, and you can learn like different professional tools that can help you respond and know how to, redirect the conversation, or how to like appropriately, talk to somebody afterwards and say, hey, I was really uncomfortable when you said this or that, whatever it was. And I didn't expect to get that from EDI training, but it's been really amazing and helpful to actually give me some of those tools so that I know how to better navigate those kinds of situations.
All amazing points. Okay, so we're going to turn it over to all of you. And if you don't have questions, that's okay. I have more to ask. But if anyone has a question, just raise your hand and I can run a mic over. Does anyone have any questions for the panel? Oh. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys for your panel today. My question is, what does leadership mean to you? And what advice do you have for young women to start to cultivate leadership qualities in themselves, even if they don't feel they're in those formal leadership roles yet?
Yeah, I can go. Yeah, I think leadership to me is really about partnership and support, and making sure that that team is represented. And sometimes I find, just in my own personality, that I want to jump down and do everything, but I have to remind myself not to do that. But I need to know enough of the details to be able to be a great partner to the team. So I think it's about the partnership. The second part to your question, I would say, go out and get leadership training now. And I'm a scientist running a business. I don't have any business training or experience, not training, I have a training now, but I don't have any education, don't have a business degree, I don't have a leadership, certificate in something, and I've had to do that along the way. And, but yeah, if you want to be a leader one day, go get the skills today.
And I would jump in and say, you absolutely don't need a formal leadership role in order to be a leader. Leaders are needed constantly everywhere. Kind of anytime you get 2 or 3 people together to achieve an outcome, whatever that means, right, there's going to need to be leadership happening, or leadership qualities happening. Completely agree about going out and getting the training. I would also maybe add that for me, there's different theories and models out there. I was sort of raised in the servant leadership model from, probably the early 2000s, which really, it's about partnership, and it's really about being someone that the leader is there to see the success of the team, basically. And that's their job. They're there to serve the team, and whatever the direct reports of the team, or however the structure is, whatever they need, that's best for the organization. That's what gets done. And so that's very much the model that I've always tried to emulate. And again, it's very much partnership, or really working with others. Not sort of that egotistical or sort of self-directed kind of leadership style that we see sometimes in the media these days.
Yeah. I'm going to double down first on the idea of a leader has to let go. One of my roles is to mentor in creative destruction labs, where I'm working with very early stage CEOs. And they're often bench scientists. And one of the hardest things for them is to understand that if they really do want to be CEO, which sometimes they just think they do because it sounds fun, and it's really not, they need to let go of the bench and trust the people they've just paid a great amount of money to do the thing that they love. And that's really hard. And I think any leadership role I've been in, you have to let the people that you've tasked to do things actually do things. That's number one. Number two is a little more targeted. There's no real way to study for leadership other than doing leadership roles, but there are a few things you can do around certain skills. So number one is, if you don't like public speaking, learn how to do it. because it is a skill and it can be kind of fun. I really struggled with it at first, early in my career, and now I'm a bit of a ham. So there you go. Number 2 is the worst part of leadership is conflict. So learn how it's done. I've actually took some very good courses from ex-CIA negotiators on how to, because I had a horrible time with conflict. Academy is one big conflict that's been going for about 1,000 years. And I had to step back and say, okay, either I stay a professor forever, or I learn how to deal with this in a way that doesn't ruin my life. And that actually took some training, and you can get, and even if you're in business, that's good too, because conflict is part of the human condition. There's ways and tricks you can mediate it. So a few courses in conflict go a long way.
What would be some of those courses? Because I'm going to write some down.
The ex-CIA one, I need to.
Can you think of,
Yeah.
is there one or two off the top of your mind?
You know, the weird thing in this day and age, you can find some great things on Coursera and on everything. Like a couple of years ago, I suddenly needed to understand venture capital in a deep way, and I thought, oh, this is going to be expensive. And there was a course on Coursera that literally taught me everything I needed to know for free, and I'm like, oh, I like this new world. This is great.
Yeah.
So
There's some great training,
there.
and I don't have a mic, but around crucial conversations.
Yes.
And that a lot
Yes.
of that is open training, and it's like a kind of a first deep dive into conflict. Okay, we'll move on to the next question.
Yeah, it is. Sorry, I feel like this isn't going to be a very well-formed question, but I've been reflecting a lot on how, I guess to the last question around leadership and leadership styles, I feel like I've been sort of socialized that leadership looks a certain way, and I feel like women are sometimes told either explicitly or subconsciously to act more like how men act. A good example would be how I'm speaking. I'm trying not to do that uplift at the end of every sentence, and it's kind of sad to me that women have to be taught to speak differently in order to be heard. So I guess if you have any reflections on that, like, I think sometimes I find myself performing a certain type of leadership in order to be heard. And then sometimes I walk into spaces and it's like, no, this is a feminist space. I don't feel like I have to observe or moderate my language. So I'm just curious if you have any reflections on that of like, and I know this is an overgeneralization on leadership styles and how we speak, but there's a lot of research into sometimes women's leadership styles are not seen as leadership. And so how do you kind of navigate this dichotomy, I guess?
Yeah, it's a little bit exhausting, isn't it? To have to think that way. I think somebody said a great quote, I can't even think of who it is, but just the freedom to be yourself is freedom. And so I think if you're in situations often where you feel like you just can't be yourself, you're not accepted the way that you are, and then it's probably not the right community. I think as women feel more, not empowered even, but just more comfortable in just being ourselves, that will over time help. So it's probably better today than it was, 10 years ago, 30 years ago. But I think just be yourself, and if you can't be yourself, then you're probably not in the right space.
And I would just add to that to me, what you were describing is really a reflection of the culture of the organization. I have almost an opposite example, which is good. Universities, for all their flaws, can have very good cultures for what you're speaking about. So we brought in one director. He happened to be male. He had a very sort of typical dominant, leadership style, a lot of, raised voices and sort of anger and pointing, and he was gone in 6 months. That does not fly in our culture. Our culture will have a meeting and listen to your perspective and listen to your perspective and then have 6 more meetings. And again, there's maybe some inefficiency to that. But it is definitely like you feel comfortable, or we certainly strive to create that environment where people feel comfortable. So yeah, I completely agree with Rhonda. If you're not feeling like you can be yourself, the culture is probably not the fit for you, or you maybe want to get yourself into a leadership role so that you can start changing that culture. That would is sort of the other approach.
Then
Yeah, it's,
smiling. I don't know if you've had the same.
Oh,
I haven't had that same experience in all universities. So
No,
that
and
sounds like University of Saskatchewan's on the right track.
you know, it's gotten a lot better. And what I would say is, if you want to keep people in a place, try and be like that. And my first teaching gig was at York, which is one of my alumnus schools, and no shade on them back then, but it was a pretty conflicted environment. But that one, you've touched on something kind of personal, in that earlier in my career, my background is from northern Finland, and we don't easily adapt to English, even though it's my first language. Someone once early in my career said, well, Lenore, you don't really have a native language. You're kind of not at home anywhere. Because I did have quite a strong accent and a bit of a stutter. And oh boy, people would call it out in interviews, etc. And I'm still angry about that. So I think it is better. But I also, I'll be honest, I did take some classes. I learned how to speak on the radio and sound good. But it takes something from you, and it's lonely. So I think the further we move away from that, where you have to fit a model, the better.
We have time for one more question.
Okay. Hi. Oh, and there's other questions in the audience, but that's okay. Okay.
Yes.
Cool. So you folks have talked about higher leadership being especially what I'd call like relationally intensive. Like there's a lot of community building, partnership development, and I'd imagine it becomes increasingly important to take care of yourself. I was wondering what personal systems or practices that you've developed for yourself to ground yourself before particularly big moments or navigating uncertainty. What does that look like for you?
Oh, wow. I mean, yeah, and the higher you go, the harder it gets. And I look at the people above me and I'm like, have I found a good enough spot? But I would say, so taking care of your mental health is critical, and that's not gender specific, because being a leader is work. And it's not a solo act. It means building teams. It means navigating conflict. It means being the person who has to respond to sudden changes. And I'll be honest, the last week for me has been horrible because I work directly with government on issues of food. So you can probably imagine what I've been dealing with. I would say one of the key things for me is most of my team never sees me flinch. My second in command, my COO in the Institute, knows me really well. She knows me so well that she knew that when the tariff discussion was breaking, she knew to call me and see if I was okay, because she knew I wouldn't be. And so yeah, choose your immediate people below you really carefully when you're building a team, because they're the ones that keep you sane. And if you break down, they can cover for you, and that will happen.
I've been able to work with an executive coach at different points in time, and so one of them really helped me. And again, it's very personal what's going to work for you, but I'm I sort of have to go through scenarios before something. You know, a big major event, I like practice. You know, I'm like, okay, and so then I'll do, and I really walk through it. It's been a really great tool for me to sort of walk through what's going to happen. You know, and sort of really it's a visualization technique basically, and really be aware, and then do just show 3 scenarios. You know, one is, I fall off the stage. Okay, what would I do then? Or, you know, I don't know, I show up and nobody else has shown up and I have to fill the whole hour myself. Or, you sort of, but like you don't want to catastrophize. You don't want to spend, 6 hours worrying about, like ridiculous scenarios. But she sort of taught me, think about the 3 sort of worst case scenario, or, your worst case, what you would do in those, and then be done. And then you stop thinking about it. So mental compartmentalization has also been another really big strategy for me. I had a really hard time for many years sort of turning it off when I went home. I just constantly, even if I wasn't working, I was chopping vegetables for supper, I was thinking about work. And so learning some of those tools and really being able to, you know, now is time for work, now is not time for work, and really sort of helping me shut off my brain were some of the things that I really needed help finding those tools.
Yeah, I can relate to some of that as well, but I think it's you know, part one is the basic things. Are you getting enough sleep? Are you drinking enough water? Are you eating healthy? Little bit of exercise. You don't need to be an athlete, because who has time for that when you're a leader? But yeah, just those types of things. I'm not on social media. Like, that was a personal choice that that I've made. Over the years, I've just seen that it's just a bit of a time suck for me, and I wasn't seeing a ton of value. So I know it's important, and I'm really glad that my business partner's all over it, and we have it set up in our business that other people take care of, but I don't have to do it, which is nice, and then I can separate, you know, home and work very easily. Those are kind of the main things for me.
That's great. I don't know, can I grab the microphone back from who has it? Sorry.
Danielle's got it.
Perfect, okay. So we just want to thank you all for joining us for this, I think, really important conversation. We really hope today's insights, you know, around championing inclusivity and mentorship within your own spheres of influence is, you know, you've taken that with you. Let's continue to build pathways for women to lead in the environmental sector. And on behalf of our panelists and today's organizers, thank you very much for your participation in this session. And I think, yeah.
Thank you.